Hi, everybody. Because we are at the very end of this unit, CHCYTH024, Managed Service Response to Crisis, to young people in crisis. What I wanted to do with this recording, because I've provided all of the other recordings, is to do a summary on assessments. So in class last night, we had a rich discussion. We caught up. It's our first week back. Of course, from our end of semester break that we had and very first class for 2025, but it's right on the tail end of what we were doing, and we completed that, our key learning and our class sessions in December in 24. I thought it might be helpful as a resource for our Diploma of Youth Work class, our Monday night class, though, for those of you who can't attend, and then also for those of you who want a refresher, that I will do a summary. And I'm really keen to get your feedback if you find this a helpful resource as well. Because if you do, then I'll make sure that I do one at the end of every unit, or even at the beginning, so that you know what you've got. But I'll take your feedback on that, the best way to tackle it. So this is specifically for our class, for those of you who are doing the Diploma of Youth Work on Monday night. So let's get started. Slowly. So at the end of this session, you'll have a better understanding around the different types of crisis as a youth worker, the principles, the strategies, policies, procedures, debriefing after a crisis or an incident, and some self-care around it. There's some other documented resources that go with this. Sometimes it's a referral, sometimes it's another document. In this particular one, we're asking for you to do task 1, which is a quiz, task 2, which is a role play, and task 3 is a role play. So there's 3 in this all together, and it covers this. What's the purpose behind it, though, is to help you with the knowledge and the skills to be able to respond to young people in crisis, and then how to work together as a team in the sector. So this is an extension on trauma-informed care, so therapeutic crisis intervention strategies. So trauma-informed care is TIC, therapeutic crisis intervention is TCI, and those two things you'll hear a lot in the sector. You may already be working with that as well. You'll need to also have a very good understanding around your legal obligations and safety considerations, which is our duty of care for our clients. And then, of course, the importance of debriefing and documenting that, the reporting in a youth crisis management framework, the principles. So the section emphasises the importance of it, and then responding to those signs. It may be an incident we are there and present for, or it may be something that we're dealing with afterwards. So a young person will show different ways that they're in crisis or they're impacted by some trauma. Usually behavioural, some risk-taking behaviours, some acting out. There's different ways. And I just wanted to do this only as a summary for you to help you, and then navigate the assessment area for you so that you can wrap up this unit that we've been working on. So it categorises trauma in 4 different types. So the single incident, a one-off, something that's complex happening over a period of time. Secondary, which means vicarious trauma, something that you can read it and be impacted by. A young person can hear about it and be impacted by that, or it could be third party. And then there's intergenerational trauma, which is our family imprint. It can be a physical one in utero. It can be the stories that get told, and how young people are trying to work out who they are and where they fit in that family unit as well, and the changes and impacts that they deal with as they're growing up. Keeping in mind, of course, that when we're working in the community sector, we are often working with our most vulnerable, high and complex need clients. And then highlighting the impact on young people's mental health. That's what this unit is about and has been about. How do we assess? So 3 tasks in this unit, CHCYTH024. Task 1 is the quiz, task 2 is the role play, that's a presentation, and of course task 3 is the debriefing with the staff who are the ones that you're going to do the presentation to. So 2 recorded role plays with some supporting documents. You will do this role play, these role plays with 4 others, preferably with your peers in class. But if you're not available, then you book it in when you're ready and advise us, and we will try and get those others. We do a lot of our communication in class, but because we record it, you are connected to what's happening in class and how to be connected to get that support. You book in your role play either when you're in class directly with myself as your trainer in that space, or you can send an email to our learner support officers, which is LSO, so all lowercase, lso@haiderinstitute.edu.au, and ask to be placed on a register, a wait list, and when others are available. So please do that. Of course, my email is the same, as in it just has my first name, which is VIKI, and then at haiderinstitute.edu.au. And we will do whatever we can, knowing that your skills component, a lot of that is ongoing, assessed in classes in real time. I encourage you, if you can, to attend classes, even if you can't attend all of them. Just know that when you get the recording, listen and watch that recording, because I will tell you then when we are going to be doing some role plays. So next Monday, we are going to be doing role plays. We're going to be doing role plays for other units. And if anyone is ready to do CHCYTH024, then they can let me know and we can do that. The Monday after that is a public holiday. So that's why I want to do the extra summary. But if you think this is a helpful resource, by the time I finish this recording, let me know. Let LSO know, give us that feedback, and we will add these as an extra, just to take that volume of knowledge that we cover and then capsule and summarize it for you. So let's go. Let's do an overview. So I'll do that in real time. So in the task, you will demonstrate with your role plays your knowledge, and answer a series of questions in your task 1, your quiz, and you must answer all of your questions correctly to get a satisfactory outcome for the task and your submission requirements. What are you going to need to do? You'll need your computer, do a recording unless you're booking it in with me or you're doing it in class, and I will send you that recording provided you email. You may use your learning materials as a reference so you can have your notes, but it's a conversation. In this one, in task 2, it's a presentation. So I never do a presentation without notes, and I wouldn't expect that you would do your role play and memorize any of that. You can do your presentation lots of different ways. You might decide to do some PowerPoint slides just like this and go, I'm going to do a presentation and have my key points there, and I'm going to present to the staff. What are you presenting? You're updating a policy and procedure, some extra resources, and adding them to it. The policy and procedures already exist in your first access portal. And when you go into your task in your own portal, it will give you the role play instructions. So there's instructions for all 3 tasks for you to do. Read those and then follow those. And if you're not sure, contact LSO, and they'll go over that for you. But if you need to have that explained, I'll try and cover everything that I can in this summary that I'm doing for you now. So we'll let you know your due date is really everybody's due date for everything is at the very end of your qualification. But I like to work on the guide. If we run 3 weeks of class, then within 3 weeks afterwards would be a good due date for any of your assessments. Otherwise, you might find that you'll get them banking up. And while that's not a problem, it can add a little bit of pressure on us when we see that it looks like it's unfinished work, but everybody goes at their own pace. And I want you to just make sure that you manage that yourself. When you're doing a diploma, it can take between 12 to 20 hours a week. Just focusing on that, coming to class, reading your learner's guide, going back into your porthole and attempting to do some of this work. So we understand that, and you've got support there as well. So just what do we need to do in a crisis? This is what I'm going to be looking for in your role plays is I want you to have your key principles, therapeutic crisis intervention, the TCI, I want you to bring that up. And then I want you to be able to de-escalate a crisis effectively and incident reporting. So it outlines that. It outlines policies and procedures. After your presentation, there was an incident in the scenario and some of the staff have been affected. But even though you're there and you're doing a presentation, and you're doing the debrief, not everybody comes forward, and that's what that scenario is about. So it's your ability to be able to coax that out of that person and work with them with all your open-ended questions, your active listening, all those micro skills that we use. And then another important factor is the ongoing training, which of course is why you're doing your presentation. You're giving some information and training the 4 hypothetical youth workers that are going to be there for your presentation. This is one that we can do in class as a group if you've got enough people there to do that. So task 2, let me get rid of that. I've just thrown this together for you. So task 2 is a debriefing sessions. It's essential emotional support for the staff and peers. We help each other. It promotes the resilience, agility to be able to bounce forward when we're dealing with complex issues to prevent burnout. I guess the section on that one is it emphasises the need for involving young people in evaluating and improving crisis response strategies and to ensure that it is very youth focused as well. So you need feedback from your clients. That's what that means. So presentation is 2 of 3 tasks that you're going to be doing. So legal and safety considerations, policies and procedures, and child protection policies, all of that sits in First Access in your porthole, and we've guided you in your instructions where to find that. This will be completed in your own time or at a time that I'm involved in it with you. But otherwise, you'll need your 4. Your assessor, that's me, will provide you with the due date. We've spoken about that. And what happens if you get something wrong? You have another attempt. If you're doing it in real time where I'm present, then you will be fine. You know, I'll get you there over the line. If there's a couple of things missing, in your presentation or your role play, I'll ask you some intentional questions just to make sure that you do have that knowledge and it just wasn't there in your role play. I guess that's the benefit of having that. I like the group ones I like to be present in those ones if we can. There's not many that do require an assessor there in real time, but the group ones, there's a lot of dynamics around that. And as professionals, when we jump into class, I want you to know that we're building if we're sharing with each other in that space. You can get other people to play those roles, but it's more effective if you do it with your peers, or if you can't do that with and you want to do it in your own time, please get to your colleagues if you are working in the sector to do that, or link with each other. So how do we respond if a crisis is in place and impacting a young person? Is recognise, respond and report. If you remember to do that, like ask the questions, report the incident on the appropriate documents, let your supervisor know that is your reporting. Make a report if the child is under 16. Okay, so that could be mandatory reporting, or it could be you bringing in the ambulance service. It just depends on what the crisis is. And then make a plan and a safety plan if it is over 16 years of age. Here's some resources for mental health triage. I like to put that in my presentations. It's different for everyone, but I also like to talk about 13, 11, 14, which is Lifeline. 13 Yarn is Lifeline's First Nation. I like to put that in as well when I'm working with people around debriefing. I want to hear some self-care as well. What are some boundaries? Know when to take a break, how we speak to our peers. Like, it's good to hear that you're looking after yourself. Last night in our discussion in class, we actually went through and shared how we cared for ourselves at the end of semester, how we balanced our studies. You're doing that all the time. So we would do the same. We would debrief with our peers, our supervisor. If you need extra support, your employee assistance program, which is what EAP stands for in the workplace, learn about this. Know what your limits are, the scope of your role, if it's part of your position. If not, we don't do that. We let our supervisor know that we need some guidance around that, and then feed it upwards. If a policy and procedure is not working on the ground, then take it to your supervisor. And that's what I want to see in the role play, is you're going to do a presentation around your policies and procedures, and then you're going to get feedback. That feedback improves performance. That's part of your ongoing quality assurance and quality improvement, which is what the community sector absolutely must have at all times. You know, we can write a policy, but if it doesn't work for you as a worker on the ground, then it's just a piece of paper. It makes no sense. So this is not technical. This is about documenting and then delivering, and then getting some feedback from others if that makes sense, or if it doesn't make sense, and being able to handle that. And then reflecting, what do you do around your self-care in that space? So that's pretty much what that is. The key learnings, a little bit of homework and that as well. What I wanted to do now, though, is to just take you over into our portal. Okay. So where we are is in the portal. Mine might look a little different to yours, but the instructions are the same. So you can see here that this is task 1 of 3, and this is your online quiz. So the very first thing you do will be for this unit, go over your learner guide, but you might also after that go into your e-learning. So I'll do a little bit of a summary around that for you. As well, I've just done a summary sheet, and that's a pretty important one. The task 1 has 5 questions, and let me just take you to them. So the first question is, briefly discuss 2 factors that contribute to young people becoming involved in crisis situations. Answers to that are in your learner's guide. Explain what are the implications of how the family dynamics and the environment can influence the way young people may respond to any of those changes. Also in your learner's guide and in our previous 3 weeks and our recordings that we have done, which you'll have copies of those. And I'll get those sent out again because it's our first week back. Question number 3, summarise why a young person may resist or enter crisis when they are on the cusp of making a positive transformation or a significant change. What's happening for them, and provide a minimum of 2 examples of strategies a youth worker, that's you, can use to manage that resistance. Okay, so they're right at that crossroads, and sometimes that can escalate the duress that that young person may be under, even if they've been part of the decision making, even if they made that goal. It's the leaving something behind, the fear of the unknown. Go into your learner's guide and refresh yourself with the recordings of this unit. Question number 4 is outline the methods and include the key principles of steps that would be followed: mediation, negotiation, therapeutic, and positive behaviour modelling, all in your slides, and then all in your recordings and all in your learner's guide. So when you're doing your assessments at home, it's open book. You can refer to that. And the final question in task 1, your quiz, is list 5 legal requirements and organisational policies and procedures that relate to safety in the youth work environment, and provide a brief explanation of what they do. For example, that might be the privacy and confidentiality under the Commonwealth legislation 1980 or 88. Go back in there and think about that. It could be discrimination. It could be the Child Safety Act. Give some reference. We're looking for 5 legal requirements. Okay, and then give some examples. So there's 2 parts to that question, and provide a brief explanation of what they do. 1 brief paragraph is all you need. 1 sentence might not be quite enough. Remember, we're diploma learners and we're looking for a little bit more than just 1 line answers here. Or you could do 3 dot points if you wanted to summarise it for yourself. As you answer each question, make sure that you hit save. And then when you're completed with that, there's 5 questions there, task 1, then go ahead and submit for that one as well. Okay, so let me just pause that. Okay, so now we're up to task 2 of 3. So 2 role plays, task 2 and task 3 of 3 are our role plays. Let's have a look at the overview. So the summary for this one is there's 2 parts. So in part A, it wants you to develop a framework, which is your updated policies and procedures. It's asking you to go into the First Access site, and you're going to be training staff in the use of your reviewed policy and procedure. So the project part A is you must create and develop a framework that prevents and responds to crisis situations involving young people. The instructions are there. And then part B is you must hold a training session with staff to support the workers in responding to the crisis with the new framework and provide young people access to services. There's 2 that we give you to add to it. We've come up with those for you. And then further instructions for each part that you need to do for your role plays. So it's saying here you can complete it in your own time. However, know that that is your background work, and you need to have 4 people, they're your workers, because that's the role play. You're going to be recording that in front of 4 people. You cannot have nobody there. It will not work. I could accept 2 others and they play 2 roles each. That would be perfectly okay. I get that, you know, it's hard to get 5 of you all together at one time. Classes, we can do that, but it takes a bit of coordination. But that's what our learner support officers are there for. Sorry if I've didn't move that black bar at the top. It's only my tabs open there. In that, so for part A, in developing the framework, it's go to First Access site. Your login username is Hader Institute, 2 words. And your password is Hader123456. Now, when you go in at your staff login and they're your login details, it will actually ask you to look for certain documents. Put it in the search, put in some keywords. All search work like that. If it gives you the code of it and you're struggling with that, just pull out a keyword and drop that in the search engine for you, where it's got there for first access. And your instructions are actually there. Oops, sorry. So you'll be observed doing the role play and observed to industry standards. That's how you get assessed. It needs to be an industry relevant simulated environment. So if you've got a blank wall, then you need to say, you know, I'm actually in the training room, if you can't get a virtual room up behind you. But imagine, where am I going to put 4 people if we're all there? Sometimes we hold our meetings virtually by teams. So if I've got 4 people involved and you want to keep all 4 people, when you record it, if you're not doing this with an assessor there and you've been able to capture 4 people or a minimum of 2 playing those 4 roles, give everyone their instructions, make sure that you record it. If you're using Zoom, if you record it in cloud, you will lose people. If you record it to your own device, your own computer or laptop, then you will keep all 4 people if you set it to gallery. So if you're stuck with that, just know that the links that I do are often done in cloud, but I can save that on my own device and send that, so all others will be in that recording as well. Otherwise, we won't get to watch you when other people are talking, because they'll be what's on camera, which is what our classes are like as well. So let me just take you back. Oh, sorry, here. So what are you going to be doing? You will play the role as youth worker Catherine Chen. You work at First Access and you youth support supervisor. So the people that you have working and attending, you're asked to do the framework for young people responding to crisis situations, which is the name of this unit. And you will use your crisis management framework template that we provide you to write the new framework. You'll review the current plan that's sitting in First Access and ensure they are consistent with the legal and organisational obligations. You will put in advice on how to upgrade. You'll give feedback, like I recommend that we implement this. What's the definition of the circumstances that may impact someone on a crisis, an analysis of the organisation's legislative and statutory requirements. All of these are in our template, and kick you off. We give you your stepping points, and take into account beliefs, rights and needs of the young person. So beliefs could be cultural. It could be a particular target group, a minority group. Just make sure that we keep in mind that it's not one, it is one policy and procedure, but we have to consider who's our target group and make sure that we have made all of our approach suitable and accessible and fair for everybody to be able to benefit from that as well. Storage of our documents, protocols for managing potential and actual crisis situations. And then once you've completed this new document, the crisis management framework on the template, you have to develop a policy and procedure. And we instruct you, you are going to use CG T5 policy and procedure template that can be presented to staff and clients using the information from the template. And it must include, as a minimum, the definition of what can contribute to a crisis, the legal requirements, how to find the resources, where they're kept, and the maintenance of them. We review in my workplace all of our policies and procedures twice a year, and all staff contribute to that. So we use that as our professional development, but we also need to get really good feedback. But under the law for policy and procedure, as long as we have done that within 2 years, of course, unless there has been a change in the legislation. So you will, as you go into your portal, you'll go your crisis management template. We've given you a link. The reports, we've given you a link. And then, of course, the email template afterwards, you're going to send that to your general manager, Llewellyn Fox. The link is there. So what are you required to submit? The crisis framework template, the policy and procedure modified by you, and the email to your general manager, Llewellyn Fox from First Access. All hypothetical, and you are not Catherine Chen. For the sake of gender identification, if you want to be Charlie Chen or Chuck, you can. But I am perfectly okay when you're doing a role play to use your own name and say, for the purpose of this scenario, I am acting in the role of Catherine Chen, but I'm going to introduce myself as John Smith, and my student ID with Hader is this. So you must identify yourself as a learner to be able to play the role, which is hypothetical. I know you're not Catherine Chen, and I know you don't work at First Access. But this is what would you do if you were, and that's what a role play scenario is. Must be to our scenario. You can change the names, of course, but the reason being is that this is mapped to your diploma. You might go, well, actually, we've got a different policy and procedure that I work to. That's fine, but it may not be mapped for your qualification. It may be mapped beautifully to the legislation, but the reason we do our scenarios and how many we do is that is actually what the Australian Quality Framework require, that there is a certain number of times that we have seen someone's skills. Of course, we can vary that if people are attending classes and doing their assessments in classes, even if it's a mock role play, that live class participation is very much ongoing progressive assessment of your skills. And then we can just look at the supporting document as well. So if you're stuck and you need some support with that, just make sure that you reach out. And now I'd like to take you over, just let me see. Okay, that was great. And let me take you into this space and look at the absolute final. Okay, you can see here on the top, and it'll be the same in your portal, task 3 of 3. So it's the second role play. So overview and some instructions. So you will play the role of a different worker, Michelle Donoghue. Michelle is a counsellor at First Access. Depending on where you're up to with your studies, you may have come across Michelle Donoghue with a couple of other assessments. So some of the names become familiar, even though they're hypothetical. We have had Michelle in a few different role plays as well. So she's the counsellor who works at First Access, hypothetically, for our scenario, and you will play that role of Michelle or Michael, however you want to identify yourself. So you're going to have a debrief session with 3 youth workers, and you will complete extra documentation to support that. We did talk about this last night in class, where that can sometimes be a discovered Oh, I've done the role play, but it's not only the role play. The role play is the skills, but the knowledge and the action point, which is what a procedure is. So a policy is why we do something, and a procedure is how we do something. Your written assessments are your underpinning knowledge, and your role plays are your practitioner skills, both the theory and the practical go into that. Same with policies and procedures. The policy is the theory, and then, of course, the practical is the procedure. How do we do that? What steps do we take in there? So it's made up of 3 parts, part A, B, and C, this particular scenario. A is 3 debriefing sessions with your workers who were involved in a crisis situation. And then part B is the supporting documentation for the debriefing and the crisis situation. And C is you must get feedback on the crisis management policy and procedure that you updated in task 2 from all of the staff involved in a crisis situation. Then you will update the policy and finalise that before you submit it with the feedback and the communication that you got from the staff in task 3. This is the whole unit. You need to do task 2 and task 3 closely together, but you won't have completed your policy until you've done task 3. Okay, so we've just stepped it out into 2 parts, task 2, and then, of course, task 3. So your assessment due, of course, when your timing is there. But I like to sort of think 3 weeks after we've finished a unit would be that. And then you won't feel overwhelmed as you'll still be progressing. You'll be starting a new unit. Some people like to do their units when we're in class. A lot will just actually have it open, see the slides and go, oh, okay, that's great. We've all got different styles on doing that as well. So I record your underpinning knowledge and your key learning. Then we have our class discussion around that subject matter. And then I'd like to break down what our assessments are. Because last night was mostly around our discussion, coming back and we had already done our content. That's why I'm doing this recording around the assessments for you. And it's complex when we're working in trauma-informed care and therapeutic crisis interventions. We need to make sure that we unpack this. It's not black and white. There's a lot of other layers inside this. We need to do it safely for you as well. So you get more than one attempt, of course, to be able to assess that. So let's have a look at the debriefing. So first of all, you'll find your information going into your First Access site, your login. It also talks about how this can be fairly triggering, which is why I said, I want to do this particular assessment summary differently to look after you as well, because we're talking in crisis and we've put Lifeline, who get lots of calls from students as well. So if it does bring up anything or you're finding that you've been triggered by some of the content, then make sure that you look after yourself there. So you're in a role play and you are going to do a simulated workplace environment. You will do the meeting room. You'll do that, or you'll describe that you're in a meeting room. The crisis management policy and procedure, you need that from task 2. You need to bring that over, pen and paper, to be able to take notes from the feedback that everyone gives you. And then also your supporting documents, which you'll get from your First Access staff login website. And you're looking for CHCYTH024, which is the name of the document. Meeting agenda and meeting template can be found here. So there's a link and it'll take you to that. But the agenda is what you're planning on saying, and we give you a document to help you with that. And then recording the minutes of that. This is part of your role play evidence. Of course, you need your computer, good internet to be able to do that. And the 3 people to play the roles, one will be Margot, one will be Jovan, and one will be Jonah. And then you'll need to give each of those 3 people their role play instructions. So they've got to take on that persona of people. Now, if you're doing this with 3 people and you're not waiting to have an assessor, that's fine. If you're doing it in class, you're going to have an assessor. Or if you go, I can't get hold of those people, then you'll book that through with LSO at hayderinstitute.edu.au and then be on the register, and we will look for people. We can do this with sometimes one person might play more than one role, but you can't do it on your own, this one, because it requires others' input and feedback. So you must debrief the youth workers who were involved in the incident. Your instructions will tell you what that is. You are Michelle Donoghue, the senior counsellor at First Access, and then other students will be working with you throughout the role play, and they will play their roles. Prior to that meeting, you will need to get your agenda done. Think about what you want to say. You'll need to have that policy that you've modified. And what are the aspects? So it will be, you might share personal experiences and observations during the crisis. This is what was happening for me. This is what I saw. This is what I heard. You know, when we talk about how do we write our incident report, it's a statement of facts. In this scenario, though, it's like, well, this was my experience, but we still keep it professional. We still keep it on task. Identify the strengths and the successes during this is what I thought went really well. And then discuss some of the things that were challenges or things that we had gaps and we identified, which is where you're going to get your feedback from people and say, would be really good if we could have had, and you want that. That's really great feedback. Thank you. You're conducting a meeting, and that meeting is around an incident, but you're getting, how can we improve on our response to young people and manage the service response to young people in crisis, and your workers are going to be able to give that to you the same as what 3 young people would as well. So assess the emotional well-being. How's everyone going? I like to do that in class where we do a check-in as well. It just, sometimes people struggle with a word to describe their feelings. So I like to work on our scale of 1 to 10 and just adapt that to meet your target group. You might go 1 to 5 and just say 1 is like, I'm feeling really flat. I actually don't think I can talk about it yet. Or you might go, look, I've had my debrief and I feel really confident. I'm happy to talk about it. Or I've had something similar and I felt more confident this time, and this is what I found helped me. That would be where your other 3 participants are going to be. Okay, and so document the action items in your minutes. So you're going to say, this is what we spoke about. It will be on track with what you did with your minutes from your meeting. Start off with an acknowledgement to country, if that's the way you would like to go. How you want to conduct your meetings, that's up to you. And then assign responsibility in your minutes of what would be the action points. And you might need some other people to do some particular things, or the individuals. So I will do this. That was really good feedback. Thank you. And then, so you're going to do this, and great. And then, and we'll put a timeline on when we're going to each meet our responsibilities in that space. So the scenario is this. Margot was running a workshop for a small group of young people on coping mechanisms, the stress and anxiety. In the middle of the workshop, Chris, a young man, 20, disclosed that he had serious self-harming tendencies along with substance abuse, causing the atmosphere in the group became tense. Because they are all very complex and require response, a trauma-informed care approach. So Margot immediately recognised the need for professional intervention rather than, oh, let's all talk about your substance misuse and your deep cutting. She signalled to Jovan, who was in the room working with her, and Jonah, using the crisis management app on her phone, have your phone, simulated workplace environment, and then discreetly excused himself from the room and contacted the centre's emergency response team. That's in the policy. That would be the step required of you. Okay, the longer you leave people in that state of impact, the more trauma impacted they are. So it's like respond, but do that in a calm and professional way. So I'm looking for that in the role play. So Jonah accesses the crisis kit from the storage room. He attended the room ready to offer immediate assistance. During this time, Margot continued to engage Chris, expressing empathy and understanding, letting Chris know that the disclosure was courageous, and that he was not alone in his struggle. When we talk about suicide intervention, self-harm is one of those doorways in, is helpless, hopeless, and alone. While you are there and while you are doing positive reinforcement, you are minimizing any risk of a heightened trauma response and also minimizing the risk of suicide. So know that by being there and responding in a trauma-informed way, then you are responding appropriately in that space. So Chris feels overwhelmed with the share and feeling triggered, and took out a pocket knife that he had with him and he began to use it. Now that is very triggering. So Margot quickly took control of the situation, calmly instructed the other group members to leave. So rather than to get to get Chris out of the room, it was easier to have the other workers remove others so that you could stay in that space with Chris. And you can do this together. So your policies and procedures that are there, but what are the gaps? And this is the work that you're doing in task 2, improving it. And now you're going to be asking others, the 3 that are there, like Jovan and Margot and Jonah, what could we have done differently and what went well when this happened in that space with Chris? So that's what this unit is about. That's what your assessments are about. It's 2 role plays, one you're doing with staff, one you're doing, and you're running a group session and there is a young person and an incident happens in real time. How do you respond to that as a service worker to young people in crisis? So, and then also, in 4, you're in 3 is your debriefing. So email and the debriefing report. There's a link to that for you as well. So there's resources for everything. So after the session, you're required to fill in the report. Don't know what to say in the session, make sure you've got all of your supporting documents. It'll guide you. Otherwise, you're winging it based on what you've got from your learner's guide and what you've done in your e-learning and maybe even in task 1. There's more support for you and more resources there, though your learner's guide is good. Okay, question number 4. Out of the 5 that are here, answer the following questions and the maintenance of where you keep your documentation at first access. What are your legal requirements? So this is about privacy and confidentiality. Where do we store that? And it must comply when you're completing the documentation of crisis situation, or, is it meeting that compliance? And what are the requirements in the first access policy on the storage of the record keeping procedures as well? And then task 5 is the instruction part C. So you'll involve the client community in providing feedback. You'll design a short and an anonymous survey. This is something that you need to do. Look, these are all question and answers. as well when you're doing a survey, but de-identify. So just say this is anonymous. A good way to do that, I have found, is SurveyMonkey, and people can keep their they can keep their name and email address private and confidential. Sorry, I'm hydrating here. So you will design a short and anonymous survey that allows young people to give you feedback and their responses. And you need that to make sure that you've hit the mark with your review of this policy and procedure. Then you'll write an email to all of your clients asking them to participate in the survey and provide them with the outcomes of your review once you've got all of them. So you need your people not to just be there, but they also need to be producing feedback for you that you can then add as part of your assessment evidence as well. So the survey and feedback response, there we are. There's a link, and that can give you that. And then the email template that you're going to send out to the people you want to do the survey. And there's your link there. So those links will take you into First Access. And get familiar with it, because that's your hypothetical organisation as if you're working. It's good to get familiar rather than just the links. It's like, oh gosh, I haven't even looked at this dashboard. It's actually very good. It's quite similar to several organisations, quite large organisations as well. Lots of policies, lots of procedures, lots of service descriptions. It says all of the different programs that First Access provide. And during your studies, you'll cross into lots of those. So go bigger picture first. Like if you were doing an orientation and starting a new position, you would be doing your policies and procedures and get an overview. It takes time, and there's lots of them, but that's why in the first 90 days, usually that's a probationary period. Policies and procedures, we do them to say, look, I've read them. Go back in and make sure that you're familiar with the systems and the procedures that you've got. And that's what these assessments are for. It will assess your knowledge and your skills, and we assess your ability to apply that. What I want to do now is just show you what I'm going to mark you on, the assessment tool that I use for both of those role plays, task 2 and task 3, just so that you know what am I looking for and I'm headed in the right direction. I want to be able to give you that as well. Okay, let me just make sure you've got as big a screen as I can give you. Okay, so up here you'll see that this is the unit, task 2, role play, and that 2B, the B is where I work, where an assessor works. So you'll have several people who may assess your work if it's uploaded in to your porthole. We have lots of trainers that are qualified in this particular qualification as well. And so it may be that they'll assess you, and if you're not quite there, they'll give you some feedback. But this is where I sit in this space as well. So if I've been present and I've watched your role play, I'm your assessor, then I go over to this place here, and this is what it's asking me. During the role play, I observed the learner demonstrate the following: supported the workers in responding to crisis by providing training and briefings, as the instructions ask you to. So it says here, the student must submit a presentation on de-escalation techniques. So I want to see that. Assessor's guidance for the presentation can be found in presentation on de-escalation techniques. Student must provide, and that's in your learner's guide as well, must provide a briefing on the crisis management and policy and procedure. That's your presentation. And as a minimum, in that presentation, start by introducing the new policy and procedure, explain the reasons behind its development and implementation, highlight the importance of being compliant, clearly outline the primary objectives and the goals and the policy aims to achieve, explain the role and the responsibilities of different staff members regarding the policy, like supervisors and where management sit in there, identify who is responsible for enforcing the policy and ensuring compliance, specify when the policy will come into effect, your new one, because you're developing and reviewing it. And so you still are in that process. You're doing a presentation, you're getting feedback and doing a survey from the people at the incident. So all of that, it forms part of your assessment. You need to do all of those steps. But you'll go, I'll have the policy finalised. We've got a couple more information gathering sessions. We're going to take it to stakeholders, we're going to take it to other staff, and we're going to take it to clients. So in your presentation, where do we get our input from? And then why is that important? That we make sure that it's not just a document sitting somewhere in a dashboard like First Access where we log in, that we look at it, that we make sure that it's working and we update it if the legislation changes or if there's been an incident, is it working well? If applicable, include any transitional periods. We're still in that information feedback. So the next meeting, we will have that in draft and everyone will be able to have a chance to have a look at that. And I need your feedback, in the presentation. Provide contact details for individuals and departments. So maybe on your final one, you might do that. So that just gives you an example. What else am I observing? In this one here, the second part is communicate the procedures with workers and other personnel. So that's your presentation. Did you do that? So you must explain the procedures outlined and answer any questions from the other participants that are there. Make sure you build some questions in. If you say, look, I'd like to open it up to the floor now, if there's some questions, you will have, if you're a participant, you will have some questions for the person who's doing their role play. And if you're all working together as a group, then rotate that and make sure that you do that in class. Sometimes I can vary how I do that, and I will try and get that very final class where we did an assessment for this unit in class, and so that you've got one that we can show you. A student must allow for questions and discussions. If you're enrolled in the Diploma of Youth Work and you're ready to do that unit, you were sent that recording just before the break, but I'll try and get that out to you and refresh. And you must encourage your staff to give you feedback on the policies, whether it's effective or not. Look at, I know that it's just a piece of paper, and if the staff are going, who wrote this stuff? None of that makes sense. Can't possibly do that. We give you an incident and everybody gets into action, like they use the app on the phone and they run through all of that. So, but was that good? The apps doesn't work, or it didn't get people there quickly enough. What went well? What could we do differently? Did I hear that? Did I see that in the recording if I'm assessing? During the role play, the learner demonstrated the following, which is your knowledge and your skills, updating that and communicated that well to your workers. So see here, we're really just checking that you went through all of this, which is in your instructions. How will we know that you did that effectively? Where we took you to the crisis management policy and procedure. So the crisis management policy and procedure is where we send you into First Access. So if you are working off that document and you've used that and referred to that in your presentation and in your debrief, you're doing great. Did you obtain resources for responding? We give you 2 known resources to apply, and you need to talk about that and put that in your presentation when you're updating staff. And with your sample email, we're going to be checking your supporting documents as well before we mark you. And we give you the link on where to go for your email as well. What else are we going to mark you on? Did you obtain the resources? We give you those resources. And did you get them? And did you mention those in your presentation? So this is really everything that's in the instruction. That's all we're asking of you. That's all we're going to be assessing on. Don't feel that you've got to have all this extra knowledge. We've given you the guide. Do that. If you are confident you've got all of that and you want to add extra, add extra. But just read the instructions and provide that when you're doing your planning, and then expand on that. But make sure you've got the core. By seeing what we're assessing you on, all of these were given to you in your instructions. So this is what we're marking. There's no high distinction when you're doing diplomas, even though that's a Cert 5. But there is feedback from your assessor. You know, you've met that to a high level industry standard. Role plays have that as well. And if you're doing it in class, of course, I will give you that feedback, but I also want you to get feedback from peers as well. What went well, what could they do differently, and be really open to receiving that feedback. That's where the improvement and the ongoing education and awareness comes from. Look, we don't know everything. It's always learning. I learn from class, I learn from you guys, and I learn from reading over your material that I'm asking you to do. I update and I'm more current. If I go over your assessments, everything that I ask you to do, I've read over it to see, is this practical when I'm prepping for class? How can I bring that alive for you in our discussions as well? So your learner's guide is great. Your slides are helpful, but the discussion is where we make sense of that as well. And then just read your instructions in your task 1, task 2, and task 3 for this. So I'm hoping that you found that's helpful. Just the 6th one there. It's only 6 things I'm marking you on for the whole of task 2, which is, have you got your documents? Did you go and get those 2 resources? Did you talk about it? And did you go into your first access site? So I know for sure you're working off that. And then it's like, did you articulate the details of the organisation's responsiveness in a crisis situation to the relevant staff? Here it says, did the student outline first access staff had good protocols and procedures for critical incidents and generally handled all crisis situations fairly well with communication and commitment to the client's high priority? Well, yes, in your theory, that's your policy and your procedure. But when the incident comes, you know, that's also like, so the written one, did you follow it? And I can't fully assess you task 2 until I've looked at task 3 as well. So I want you to do these closely linked together, this body of work. Your 2 role plays, line them up. Task 3 will not make sense unless you've done task 2. And I cannot emphasize enough, your learning comes this way. Do task 1. It starts you off for task 2, and task 2 gets you ready for task 3. Task 3 will even refer to task 1 and task 2 sometimes. So don't cherry pick, just start at the beginning. It's sequential learning. That means we're getting you there with your knowledge in steps. Okay, hope that makes sense for you. Right, let me stop sharing for you there. And I've done a little bit more of a summary. I'll show you that. Okay, just in this one here, sorry, let me just make that a little bit bigger for you. Sorry, I'm doing all of this in real time. Okay, it's a little bit tidier for you. I have no clue why that is there. Oops. Hope that's a little bit better. Sorry about that. It's just a little bit of tech stuff crossing over. This is mine. This is a sample of your presentation. I just want to give you an idea of what I'll be looking for. So this is the minimum information that I would be wanting from you, and I would like you to get some PowerPoint slides and to be able to put that in your presentation as well. The same as how I'm presenting for you, the same as what I do in class. That's why I can help you with it if you're in class and we do that in real time, or you can book that in and we'll give you some guidance. This is a complex one. I like to walk beside everyone who does these role plays simply so that I can look after you in that trauma-informed way. But your presentation may look something like this. You'll put your name, de-escalation techniques. That's what you're going to be talking about. You're going to offer an agenda. You're going to speak to your slides or your presentation, or you might prepare your slides and do them as a separate attachment and then do your recording as well. You might not be able to set it up quite like this. So, but they can be two separate things. One, a recording and you work off your notes and then you present that. But your presentation must be as you present in your slides. You'll need to have an introduction, say what a de-escalation is, why it matters. This is what we've talked about. These are your instructions. I've given you what I'm going to be marking you on. Here's a sample of your presentation. Do an introduction. You might like to do your acknowledgement to country. That's up to you. This comes straight off your instructions. What is a crisis de-escalation? Why is it essential for youth workers? And then you're going to talk about that in your presentation. You're going to encourage people who are there to be contributing to that in your questions. You might say, look, we'll do questions at the end of it. I'll get your feedback from that and refer from there. It's always good to give people a clipboard when they're at a presentation so they can have notes. Please write these down because it's staff that you're presenting to. So they're at work. Stages of crisis, de-escalation, recognise the warning signs, communication, set all of those there you followed up. Strategies, case studies and role playing. You might do that in your presentation. Q&A, open the floor up for questions and discussion, and then wrap it up. Recap your key points, encouragement for implementing de-escalation skills in their roles, thank everybody, and your closing remarks. That's what I would be expecting as a minimum. So that is 11 slides. I would be looking for something very similar to that. Okay, just to give you an idea. And what's good about this and what I like, if you go to your PowerPoint template, and if you're stuck, let me know and I'll send you some blank templates as an attachment to be able to work from. But look, just 3 dot points, know your content, speak to that. Okay. And then make sure that you put Catherine Chen as presented by, and it might be John Smith, Diploma of Youth Work. Okay, so you're the HADA student, it's your work, it's your assessment, but you're in the role of Catherine or Charlie, however you want to present that. So that's your role play assessment and your supporting documents that go with that. So I'm hoping this recording and a sample gives you a little bit more of an idea. Okay, our very last shared screen. on this unit, CHCYTH024. So in this, we have 3 tasks. Task 1, quiz. We've been through that. 2, role play is your presentation. Just showing you a sample. We've been through that. And task 3 is the role play, actually where the incident is, and the debriefing of the staff as well. And making sure that people are comfortable with it. Your role play is the debriefing of the staff. Okay. So I just wanted to show you the first 3 things. When you go into your student portal, they are e-learnings. Now, those e-learnings don't count towards your assessment, but a lot of people find them really helpful as a practice run. So if you don't get anything, if you make one mistake, you can't go back and do that one again. I can't even see your responses. So please don't worry about those. You'll get a red cross, but that's just to let you know. You can get that when you're doing your actual assessment, but that flags it for us, and you get 3 attempts with your assessments. With these ones, you only get that 1 shot at it, but it's kind of like a bit of a dress rehearsal, a practice run for you. Get a feel for the language, playing and pushing some buttons and going, okay, I think I'm ready. Some people don't ever do the e-learnings. It's really up to you. So the best way to study is you get a new unit, you look at all of them, you read through your learner's guide, don't do the activities, then go over and have a look at your assessments, and then go over and have a look at your e-learnings. Do a couple of those if you want, do all of them. You will have a task 1, task 2, task 3 in e-learning as well. So here you can see 1, 2, and 3 in e-learning, and that little icon there is what's different. But your actual assessment here, where it's got the keyboard, there is task 1, online quiz. Task 2 is the role play, and then task 3 is the role play. And here, the observation checklist, that's what I showed you that the assessor looks at. So I've gone through what is it that we're actually going to be marking you on to give you an idea. Everything we mark you on, you've been given the instructions for. Make sure that if it asks for supporting documents, that you've done those as well. So with this one here, the objective of the unit is to make sure you've got the knowledge and skills to be effective in managing a crisis situation. You're going to be having a greater understanding of the importance of regular training and briefings, and then how important your policies and procedures are, and to update them so that you're compliant. Those 3 things pretty much. So the task summary is you'll be observed in role plays. Makes sense. We've done that. What resources? You'll do the recording, be done in a meeting room or classroom, so it'll be virtual, and it needs to be a simulated workplace environment. You'll need your crisis management policy and procedure that you developed in the first part. You'll need your email template. You'll need to go into your first access site. You'll need your computer or a tablet. Can't do it on a phone, we found. Your recording might be done WebEx or Zoom. You can have a free Zoom account for up to 40 minutes. So just know that whatever you're working with, it needs to be inside those timelines. If you don't think you can, and it's asked for 3 lots of 20 minutes, you might like to do 3 separate ones, part A, part B, part C. And that makes sense. You'll need 4 people. The instructions, of course, you'll have. Those 4 people would be Bella Reid, Jovan Prasanna, Jonah Franks, and Margot Portugalis. And they're all staff members. You must update the crisis management policy and procedure for your general manager, Llewellyn Fox. And you will contact the vendors, and that means that Llewellyn has given you 2 resources that she wants you to add to it. You will create a short presentation on de-escalation. I just showed you a sample. You will play the role of Catherine Chen or Charlie. Other students will be working with you throughout the role play, and they'll play the other roles, and you'll give them their instructions. With the presentation, you'll run a training session for the 4 youth workers. And then once the training session is complete, you will brief the staff on the new policy and procedure. This is what I prepared. Give me your feedback. Make sure that you outline your findings on the first access responsiveness to crisis situations that are there to date, and then where you're updating and reviewing them, getting their feedback. Send an email using the template to all of the clients to get that survey back on the new crisis one that you're doing. Your scenario, you are replying to Llewellyn's email and adding the following crisis management new policy and procedure. You're going to outline the characteristics of aggressive and abusive behaviour. Alternative workers can offer to coercive, aggressive and abusive behaviour. What are some different de-escalation techniques? In addition, Llewellyn has asked you to contact the following vendors: Noggin, purchase of their response and crisis management software for the first access officers, and a real response, a youth mental health first aid course for the youth work team. Do a bit of research about them. So once this has been updated, she's asked you to run the training session, and that's where those slides and your presentation come in. So during the role play, your assessor will look for certain things, and I step that out for you, what we actually mark you on. With part B of it, so that's all your documentation, your preparation and planning. Part B is your presentation. It's recorded with 4 others. You're going to do a 15-minute crisis response training session plan. You're going to start with an objective, the agenda, an intro. Just take 2 minutes there. This is just to help you know how long we've given you this information in your instructions. So training and briefing, 5 minutes. Communicate your procedures, 3 minutes. What's the responsiveness? 3 minutes. Q&A time, 2 minutes. There's your 15. Discussion questions for participants. Here's some questions you can ask them. What do you think are the most critical skills needed to be effective in a crisis response? Leave room at the end for your Q&A. And of course, these are all open-ended questions, aren't they? So this is how we work with our clients. This is how we work with our team. Can you share how can regular training improve our response? It could build confidence. What kind of questions, and it will depend on the answers, and you'll need the survey as well. How can we ensure that our organisation remains responsive? And then what do we need from you? We need your presentation for the training session, an updated policy and procedure for crisis management, 2 emails that you're going to send out, one to Noggin, one to Youth Mental Health First Aid, and then an email to clients informing them of the new policy and procedure, and of course your video recording of the role play. So that's our summary. And that is CHCYTH024. Happy to work with you in this one. And let me get this out to you as a back. We didn't record our discussion in class last night, but it was rich and it was very individualised because the learners had lots of questions, and we do that. And we had fully covered our unit leading right up to the end of year break. And we just had one more week, and we made that about how can we help you. I'm doing this recording because I wanted to make sure that those who can't come to class have got that. And then those who do come to class can have a refresher as well. So we'll see you soon. And of course, if you've got any questions, make sure that you reach out.